Right, well, I'm going to start, if that's OK, with Professor Angus Dalgleish, obviously, as I've just said there, Professor of Oncology at St George's, University of London. What's your view on this? Will you be getting any more COVID jabs? Do you think people should?
No, I don't. Basically, I don't. But I think we should even have had the booster. Everybody, I mean, the third vaccine booster, everybody I know who's had it has gone down with COVID very shortly afterwards. And there's a very good reason for this, and that is that the vaccines were basically targeted at the first couple of strains of the virus that we had 2 years ago now. And the booster is to boost these when those viruses have long gone. What we now have is a totally different shaped virus and a number plate, antigens, etc., called Omicron. And this basically is not protected by the vaccine. And actually, even worse, if you give a booster, the immune system goes up in its high horses, as it were, to see the vaccines that are no longer there, and Omicron slips in and infects you.
Slips through the net, does it?
Yeah.
OK, well, we'll return to all of that. There's lots to get stuck into there. But, of course, we also have Doctor and Senior Clinical Lecturer Dr David Strain. Thank you very much. I'll bring you in now. Will you be getting any more COVID jabs? Would you advise everyone else to do the same?
So I will be getting my COVID jab when the time is right for me to be getting it. And that's not yet at the moment.
Yeah. You're nowhere near old enough.
We are all really hopeful that by the time the majority of us are ready for our booster, that we'll be into the bivalent or the trivalent vaccines, that will be bringing the original components. So the antibody soup that we had in our first instance gives us about 15 different antibodies. And we still know 8 of those are effective against the Omicron variant, but we do accept that that's lost half of it. By the time most of us are ready for our boosters, we'll be having bivalent vaccines that will be against those 8 and also Omicron specific, or for that matter, whatever variant is around at the time. The problem is, at the moment, particularly for the elderly, particularly for the immunosenescent, those who have got immunocompromised, the efficacy of the booster has worn off. And for those population, I do accept that it's not perfect, but boosting those 8 antigens that are effective is going to be enough to see them through the summer until we've got that specific vaccine. OK, Professor Angus, I'll bring you back in now. Let's say I was a vulnerable elderly chap with some kind of underlying health issues, which is no doubt a window into my personal future. But would you recommend now, even for me, you'd say no, don't get any more jabs?
Not for you, but for somebody who's elderly and very much at risk, then I don't think it will do too much harm, except it's not going to last very long. We know that the third vaccine lasts only up to 8 weeks or so, and we know from the Israel studies that the 4th booster vaccine only lasts about 5 weeks or so. And, you know, the thing is that people have lost the sight of, this is not the antibodies that are important. Yeah. This is a vaccine which is controlled by T cells, which nobody designing these vaccines thought about T cells until after they started going into patients. And we know from SARS-1 that SARS-1, which is a very, very nasty virus, 17 years ago, those people who survived it and are very healthy, they have fantastic T cells. Okay. They don't have any antibodies at all. Okay. So I think we're focusing on the wrong thing.
Dr David, can you understand why some people say maybe this is a money thing? We were very grateful at the start, maybe, for several companies creating a vaccine for us, and now we feel like we owe them. So we're going to keep rolling this thing out relentlessly to help line their pockets.
I can see why people have that perception, but actually in the UK, those companies aren't making anything like the profits they are elsewhere. The UK government has provided the underwriting, the insurance, so that we can get our doses of vaccines far closer to the cost of actually manufacturing them. So it is not so much a money spinner. It's about keeping people out of hospital. And I think it's the one thing that we can agree on is that that at the moment, we are seeing unprecedented number of patients in hospital. Today, I have more patients, mostly of the elderly variety who had their original vaccine 8, 10, 12 weeks ago, their booster. I've got more patients like that in hospital today than I had at the peak of the second wave. Okay. We need to be doing something in order to keep those people healthy and to get our death rates back down to what they were in pre-December. And unfortunately, at the moment, the only solution we've got is that booster vaccine, even if it does just generate the 6 to 8 weeks protection until the summer arrives and the distribution gets there.
I'm going to finish with the dreaded yes and no question now, chaps, and I'm going to start with you, Professor Angus. In your honest opinion, do you feel like we're out of this pandemic now?
Yes, I do. Certainly this one. There might be something else coming along, but this one is now dying like we predict with all pandemics. They go in waves and then disappear. OK,
good stuff. Same to you then, Dr. David.
Far from it at the moment. I've got more patients in hospital. I'm having daily deaths directly of COVID. Until that stops and the NHS is back tackling waiting lists, the pandemic isn't over.